You may not need. So sorry. You might just see me. That work down there, they go to city in the field and get done.
Hello, Madam Mayor.
See ya. I can't.
The wireless mic is right at the table.
So when we go
I know.
How are you? Thanks. Jim and Chris.
Be careful when the mic goes on the speaker.
1, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. Council on Aging meeting. Where do people come from, huh? I'm glad to have everybody here today. As somebody says, this is the normal attendance. I'm telling you. Ah, yes. I'm going to pass it around to, oh, wait a minute. Let the record show that the Council on Aging meeting started at 1:37. The agenda today is going to be different than most of our Council on Aging meetings, where we're talking about the subject on the Board of Health and its possible relocation here to Callahan. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify some people first, and then I'm going to hand the mic to the Board on the Council on Aging. We have City Council people. Mike Cannon. Stand up. Oh, there's Mike back there. Oh, you're standing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mike. Adam Steiner. Cheryl Tully Stowe. Judy Grove. Mike Rossi. Do I have anybody else from the City Council first? Oh, stand up, please. Stand up. Okay. George King. Where is he? Where Get ready. Where is he? Oh, there he is back there. Okay, and I have Adam Freiberg from the school committee.
Back by the door.
There he is back there. Do I have any other notable? I mean, other than our mayor. Okay, I'm going to hand this around, and I'm going to have the members introduce themselves. My name is Clyde Doughton, and I'm the chairperson of the Council on Aging, and I'm glad to have you here at this meeting. Hold on a second.
Good afternoon, I'm Jennifer Rich. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Audrey Hall. Nice to see you all.
My name is Mark Goldman. I'm vice chair, and really great to see all of you here.
My name's Jim Dibber. Thank you.
I'm Betty Muto, and thank you for coming.
Fred Wallace, welcome all of you to the Senior Center.
Glenda Thomas, welcome everyone. Ruth Ann Tomasini, and happy to see such a good crowd here today.
We have one other member that's in the audience, and that's Grace O'Donnell, Director of the Senate. And our other person here is Mayor Spicer. Okay. Before we go, oh yes, well, yes, forgive me. I almost forgot that I have a front row of reserved people.
Jim Snyder, Director of Parks, Recreation, Cultural Affairs.
Jim Paolini, Director of Capital Projects, Facility Manager.
Shabata Van Zandt, Senior Advisor to the Mayor and Liaison to the Council on Aging.
Kelly McFalls, Public Information Officer.
Patrick Easer, Chief Operating Officer. Sam Wall, Director of Public Health. Chris Brown, Assistant City Solicitor.
Mary Ellen Kelly, Chief Financial Officer and Director of Administration and Finance.
Don't.
I think that's a code violation.
That's right, we're gonna keep everybody in one area here. As I said, I appreciate everybody coming out for this subject. So let me identify how this is going to go, but let me also identify that Council on Aging here is to look out for the seniors of Framingham and look to do the best that we can to make sure that seniors are well attended and listened to. I will also identify that the Council on Aging is an advisory board to the mayor, okay? That's what we are. So with that being said, the mayor is here and we are her advisors, but I'm going to let her open up the meeting with a conversation, with her speaking. Then there are going to be questions from the board, and then we will open it up to the public by using that podium over there that has a microphone. I want to identify that this is not going to be a meeting for people to run for office, make a political speech. We are here to discuss the issue, and the issue is the possibility of the Board of Health moving into the Callahan facility. And I want to keep that conversation specifically to that. Okay? Thank you. Mayor Spicer.
Thank you. I think I'll stand up so everyone can see. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here this afternoon. And one of the things that I want to expressly state that since the onset of becoming mayor, one group of people that has always stayed front and center for me are our older adults. And every action that I have done has demonstrated that and going forward. And
Please, let the mayor speak, please. Okay?
thank you. Now, how many of you had a chance to read the document that I put out? Okay, good number of you have. And I'm going to do a Cliff Note version of it, but I also will be able to answer some questions. My staff has also provided some handouts, a briefing of it, like a 2-page summary of the document. And I will start by saying, what is the challenge? What is the challenge that we are facing in the city of Framingham? And the challenge is, and it's a good challenge and a bad challenge at the same time, we got approved for a new Fuller Middle School building. The Board of Health, or the Health Department, I have to practice saying that, the Health Department is in the Fuller building. They can no longer stay in that building. Now, we have been looking at viable options for the Health Department since we learned of the Fuller vote. And the document that I produced looks at 7 different options and, that we explored as a viable option. And here's the impetus of why the options are explored. First of all, can we get in them? Are they accessible? That's another thing. Is the facility accessible? Does it have at least a minimal square footage of space? And then also cost efficiency. How much is it going to cost the city of Framingham in order to do it? So we looked at, with the help of Jim Paolini and the Thatcher Keyser, they started the process of looking at viable properties that we, the city of Framingham, owns. And unfortunately, a number of the properties that we could potentially use are derelict, and it would cost too much in order to bring them up to code to be able to be usable. So when we think about the McCullough Library, there's that is a property that was explored. We looked at all the viable things, and right now, if you remember, when the Danforth closed, facilities had to move some of our data systems to that library. So they're in there, the workshop's in there, and also there's asbestos in that building. So that is a problem. Looking at the Danforth building closed over 3 years ago. And it closed due to the fact that it was unusable, the heating system and the asbestos and other challenges within that building. Looking at the old fire station, that has come up, which is currently the home of Amazing Things. We looked at that and thought with the cost of trying to fix it, and then also displacing yet another organization that is that is something that we know that is extremely important to the community, which is our arts community, and would not want to be doing that as well. When I think about, let's see, going through all the other options. Thank you. City Hall. Looking at City Hall. Space-wise, we are busting at the seams. Parking-wise, it's not feasible. Also, the other thing, too, is looking at the notion of having a generator that can keep running in the event of a power outage. And this building has one. City Hall has one, but it does not meet the needs. And also, it's more so the space. There is no space at all. So as you know, I start to look at the exhaustive list of Perini building. I'm sorry, I forgot that one right across the street. We looked at the potential of Perini building. It is not accessible. It has approximately 3,000 square feet of space available, but at $19 a square foot, it would be about a $57,000 investment, and that's before we brought data systems. The other reason why we focused on city-owned property is the infrastructure buildup. Because if we go outside of the city, there's not only the cost of getting the building, but it is the cost of also upgrading the facility in order to bring the data in that needs to connect to the city computers. And that is also contingent whether the fiber wires are there. So that's another factor. And after looking at all of these factors, what we looked at was an opportunity to say, how do we make this work in an existing building that is time sensitive, that can be done in a short period of time. And part of that was the exploration of last week's conversation last week's conversation that was still a conversation, that is still a conversation, that was not a definitive, final, done deal, because we are always looking at options. And I want to personally say thank you to Councilor Pam Richardson, who did call and say, how can I help? How can I look at options? And I put out to other people that have called and contacted me, please help me with another viable option. So that's the other thing too, is that we were at a stage in this process of still looking at the options. And we're still looking at the options and trying to look at what is the space. So having a visit to this building, I know Jim's been here, both Jim Snyder and Jim Paolini have looked at options in this building, looked at the systems in this building to see how we work. Also talking with Dr. Wong, looking at a number of the programs that are run at the health department that benefit and serve our older adults, and how the collaboration is a pretty good one. And some of those kinds of things that have been happening for the last year. And Dr. Wong's been in Framingham a little more than a year, about almost 2 years he's been here. And looking at ways in which he has built up programs, like the Coalition for Dementia. He's looking at issues of flu shots, shingle shots, healthy older adults. All of these factors that are happening in terms of programming for the health department right now. Now, I brought my entire team that could answer questions today about other issues, legalities, about space. I brought them for that purpose, and so if during the course of our discussion, if there are questions specific to certain space, I will defer sometimes to other folks. But this is still a process of thinking about the best possible options that, once again, is the impetus of this is we have no space. We unfortunately have not maintained our buildings, and many are very derelict over the years. And so it's trying to take a real tough situation and make the best of it in the short term, because this is a smaller problem of a bigger problem in the city of Framingham. I will say to you, in this year's budget, I am asking for funding to look at studying our properties that we own so we can make some, develop some data to make some good, effective steps on whether we repair a building or whether we sell it or what we're going to do with some of the properties that we own that are sitting dormant right now. And that is many years of a lack of investment in some of these properties. So trying to, kind of move from that direction. And coming here today, I want to make sure that I hear your voice. I want to make sure that I hear alternative options. I want to make sure that we're trying to figure this out together to the best of our ability. And for that matter, because I want to also leave plenty of time for questions. Once again, I will say there is a 2-page handout. I don't know how many copies Kelly has brought with her, but she does have a 2-page handout. And if she runs out of copies, what we probably can, Grace says she can help out if we run out of copies of that and share it with. And basically, it's an abridged version of what I just talked about. And I will say that we created a list of frequently asked questions, and I thank each and every one of you that called my office, sent me an email, because we culled the questions and tried to find the ones that were common questions and created a frequently asked questions list to be as responsive as we possibly can regarding this situation. The intent was we were coming to this meeting to talk about this plan. It was in the media and out in the public before the plan was completely fleshed out. And so that is one of the things too, that unfortunately a lot went out there that really wasn't ready to go out there. And with that being said, the conversation is that we were doing this anyway. I was on their agenda to come and talk about this anyway. So that, we'll kind of go from there. So Clyde, you want to start and ask questions? We'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you for that bit of information. Can I ask one of the questions is that, so the decision is not final that the move is happening here at Callahan? Is it just under discussion?
The decision, this is right now, that with all of the factors contributing, this is the best possible option that we've come up with thus far. Thus far, unless you've got something else. So, and once again, this is an interim. It's an interim situation. It is an interim situation.
Okay, I'm going to hand it down to my board members. We'll start from this end, so the questions. Is this live?
Somebody said it was. Testing? Testing?
You got it. You got it. So I'm going to, you answer the question, I'm going to have you hold on to that. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? I believe somebody was asking about copies of the synopsis that the mayor had asked, whether or not copies can be disseminated, and I believe that Grace is doing that at this current time. Notice I don't need a speaker, huh? Yeah. And the clipboard, where's that at? I've asked people to sign in. It's over here. It's over there? Okay. All right. Just keep the clipboard moving. Okay, go, please.
Okay, Madam Mayor, could you tell me how long ago this process was started?
How long ago was this process started? The Fuller vote happened in December of 2018. It was passed for the new school building. So this conversation has been happening since that happened. And we've been looking at different facilities since that time period.
I believe that had there been previous knowledge, we could have had a more transparency and a better outcome. My concern is the tremendous growth of elderly. It's growing exponentially every day. You're inhibiting the growth of the Callahan by taking over. And it's happening at a time when, as I say, it's just exploding. So.
So I'm just going to piggyback what Ruth Ann has started. So, Mayor Spicer, can you give us a little bit around the timeline for this project and, you know, when the decision you feel has to be made to when the Board of Health has to move out?
I know overall, but I can also ask Ms. Paolini to speak more detail about what has to happen in the process in order to make that happen. I said I was going to ask Mr. Paolini to speak about the timeline and the details associated with a move. So I'm going to ask him if he would.
One of the biggest preparations that have to be made is more or less our IT infrastructure has to be upgraded to accommodate the move in. That would have to take place because I have a June 15th deadline that has to be, they have to vacate the Fuller Middle School. So that would probably end up taking place sometime in the third week of May. That would be nighttime work. Mostly none of the existing rooms as they are would be disturbed. It would just be data runs and pulls into the IT center. And then following somewhere around June 1st, I would have to start to set up the space.
What we're going to have, you're going to be able to ask the questions.
They'll be in the space at the 15th if I start on June 1st.
Until when?
I don't have an answer for that.
I've been on this board for a few years now, and I remember the struggles and the hard work that went into achieving accreditation from the National Society of Senior Centers, the National Institute of Senior Centers. Do I have that right, Grace? Yep. And we're very proud of the fact that our senior center here in Framingham is one of only 9 out of 351 in the state of Massachusetts that has received this accreditation. And I'm very concerned that the weeks and months ahead of us as we go through the alterations to the building here and so forth may have an impact on our future accreditation. As a matter of fact, I mentioned that 9 out of 351 municipalities in Massachusetts have accreditation. In the whole nation, in the United States, there are 120 centers like us that has been accredited. So this is not something to take lightly. I want to be assured that whatever happens in the building here is not going to jeopardize that accreditation in any way, and I'd like to have an assurance from our leaders that this will not happen.
And with looking at what the accreditation process is and so forth, the intent is not to disrupt programming, activities in this building. And part of what I am looking at in terms of the space, because the concern or the question was about space, this building, as Jim had conveyed to me, is 23,000 square feet. And the percentage of space that is being utilized for this move would be 11% of this building, or 11%. So, and also looking at some of the potential of, I don't know all the criteria, but I don't anticipate it being a challenge. And if your accreditation is based on the services and programs, there will be no change in services or people's jobs, because that was one of the questions that came up. Will some folks lose their position? There is no anticipated plans to change any of that too. And does anyone else want to add anything?
Hi, Patrick Keyser again. Just to add some of the comments. When for one, the whole timeline, I mean, we knew the fuller vote was coming, so there were earlier conversations of, okay, what's the impact of the overall project and the things to be considered. And then once the vote was definitive and there was certainty as to what was going to happen, then there were a series of meetings to look at and vet out all the various options. And we know that all the options had implications. So for example, looking at the Perini building, we're looking at, can we get shared space with the school folks? Can we piggyback on the lease agreement already in place? There are procurement rules we have to follow. And as long as we're not expanding beyond a certain percentage of our existing agreement, we could do it without a procurement. Again, try to keep costs down. But as the time frame went on, and as we vetted each of the options and looked at them and just, basically uncovered that, well, this one's not going to work out so easy and this one's not going to work out. The question as to the definitive of this, the short answer is right now it's the best viable option we have available, and well, as others have said, if there's a better option, we're happy to look at it and do it. But here's the challenge we have is timing to make the move, because there's a date certain that the health department has to move out, and poor Jim Paolini has only so much time to do the things that need to be done. And so different sites have different build-outs, longer time frames. This one, we are right at the edge of giving Jim the signal to say go in order to get it done in time. That's the challenge we have. So to the question as far as how long is this for, the phrase we've used is interim. we chose not to say temporary because, at least in my mind, if we knew this was for 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years, we would say, yeah, temporary, because we had a date certain. We don't have a date certain because, as the mayor alluded to, the bigger problem we have is, is the bigger problem we have is the overall, I'll have to share with you.
Hold on. Okay. We're going to have some time for audience participation. I ask that we allow the mayor to make her comments, and then we'll respond to them. Okay? I'm not going to forget you guys. I mean, you're here for a reason. So let them finish making their statement. Okay? No, the proposal will be made later. Let them finish making their statement, and then you will have a time to ask questions.
So to finish my thought, it's interim because we don't have a date certain, because we need to put together a larger strategy to create more space, because we just don't have space within our municipal buildings, and to create new space outside of what we already own is a significant cost increase, and that's what we're faced with. Our goal is, as quickly as we can, to put a larger strategy together to look at all the pieces, meaning all the divisions and departments, to find a better arrangement for all of it. That's our goal.
No, it's already on, Betty. It's already on.
Unaccustomed as I am, I just want to let you know that I'm a strong advocate for the senior population. I work daily on many different committees, and you are not going to be unrecognized in your feelings. I wanted to ask, what if not Marion High School was considered in this? How do you answer the people when we are under the understanding that Callahan was given to us for the use of the senior population? Thank you.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. The word temporary or interim bothers me, obviously. I think that's what they said about the tolls in the Mass Pike. Yeah, I know. I just don't understand, if you're going to have to put money into renovating space here, and then put money into renovating a permanent location down the road, isn't that spending money that we shouldn't? I mean, wouldn't you be better off identifying a permanent space, even if you have to pay rent at it, and then put the money in for renovations? I also can't believe that I've done a lot of building construction, not me personally, but I've been involved in, I run nursing homes, and I've been involved in hospital management. And anytime you do construction, you can usually work out something with the construction company to not have that type of deadline and postpone it for a month or two and work around it. It can be done. I know it can be done because I've seen it done. So I don't understand if you're going to have to put $60,000 of cost into renovating this building, and then if it's truly temporary and interim, another 60 or more thousand into someplace else a year from now, or whatever that may be, and what disruption that's caused. Second is space. You talk about 11% of space here. I walked around the space that they identified, and to me that's a lot more than 11%. They may have 23 or 24,000 square feet of space here, but how much of it is usable right now that is used by the seniors versus space that's not usable? So I think that's a false number. I also want to know if you, in looking at other alternatives, have you talked to the hospital? Have you talked to the community center? Have you talked to advocates or SMART? They certainly owe us at this point. So I guess those are my questions. I just have a real issue with what temporary is.
I'm gonna leave Mark to last, okay?
My questions have to do mostly with the whole process of identifying space more than anything. I think that brainstorming brings people together with a lot of ideas that sometimes are out of the box and creative, and having a room full of people here is probably getting a lot of those creative juices flowing. But one of the things that I was thinking about was years ago, and I don't know if it still exists or not, but years ago Woodrow Wilson School had a clinic in the school. They actually were set up with their own health clinic. They had nurses, they had patient rooms, they had everything. I don't even know if it still exists today, but they did have it. When I was president of the townwide PTO, we did an extensive tour of it. We were very impressed. Much of it at the time was funded by Title I. I don't know if it's still there, but because of that school population, they were able to have their own health clinic. And I'm just wondering if we ever even looked at that space or that idea. And with that in mind, I was thinking also along the lines of maybe the block school, or up at the old Juniper Hill, just trying to see if there's a partnership in any way with a needy population where we're serving children, or we're providing health services in another capacity to tie into the health department in what might be a really good fit, an appropriate fit. And then, of course, Jim mentioned the, thanks. Jim mentioned the hospital, and I do think that for a health department to work with the Health Foundation and the folks there who've been so good to our community to come up with some creative idea that might actually present new opportunities that maybe hadn't been considered. And thanks. But I do want to remind people, because one of the things that I keep thinking about is back when town meeting was making a lot of decisions about buildings. We recently gave up the Maynard building because the museum was important to us. And we've given up space for a lot of reasons. We gave up the fire station, two amazing things. We have a lot of buildings that need an incredible amount of work. We debated over this for years. And so I just think that I understand the shortage, but I also understand that, this facility and its purpose, we fought long and hard for this. I do remember the vote at town meeting. I do remember the generous gift from the Blazes. We're in the room named after them today. And I do think that with our growing population, it would really help if we could expedite the process, but definitely look at some other options, maybe bringing some other potential partners to the table.
Thank you. I want to pick up on Mr. Diver's comments about the 11% usage. There's a whole second floor that's included in that. No, I can't.
We're gonna let Mark sit down.
Mark sits. The 11% includes the whole second floor that's used for nothing but storage, and the medical aid equipment that we provide free to the community. Don't have to be a member, don't have to be a senior. That equipment is up there. The third floor, we have our nurses' quarters up there. We have game rooms, we have plenty of room. But truthfully, that 11%, that's the heart and soul of this center. That's the heart and soul of this center. And to me, that's a tragedy I guess that's all I want to say. It's just, my personal feeling is that this plan is cutting out the heart of the center.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I have a number of questions or statements to make. And as I said, we were an advisory board. We are an advisory board to the mayor. Several of my own questions are, one, when this discussion started about moving the Board of Health into other venues, my own belief is that when the Callahan Center was identified, that perhaps Council on Aging should have been brought in at the time that they were identified. I think that being part of the mayor's advisory board, I think the process broke down someplace, that we weren't notified. Now, my comment here is that had we been notified, it would have at least allowed us to look before we had the 10 weeks that we had to start working. We would have had a lot more time for this. I don't know when it started, but I guess I was concerned about who were the interests that were in the meeting when this started. I'm assuming that we had some key people, but who was part of this decision? I mean, I myself had a question when it first came up about possible places. Right over on Water Street and Edgell Road, we have the church that's there, and we have the brick building, which I believe is owned by the owner of the mall. And I believe, and I'm not sure that they're going to be able to tell me, that even the revising of that area is probably going to be almost 2 years. So that if it's going to be close to that, we have a brick building that I don't know if anybody looked at. I mean, as the mayor had said that if there is anybody out there that knows possible locations, send it into the mayor, okay? We have the possibility of sending that information for the mayor to make sure that they look at these possible openings, but you're going to have to do that soon. I understand the fact that they have maybe a 10-week time frame, and I don't want services to be hindered, especially services that might impact you seniors. I want that to continue. So if you have other areas that they haven't spoken about or thought about, I want you to make that recommendation to the mayor's office. Now, as the questions have been asked by the board, I'm going to give this back to the mayor, and then I'm going to give it out to the group to ask their questions, okay?
Thank you. I want to look at, the first question is looking at the timeline. First of all, this was a group effort. As I said, the leadership team that was tasked with trying to find space. First of all, Jim Pellini and Thatcher Keyser first did the first pass of looking for different space. When it came to a conversation about this building, Jim Snyder is involved in this conversation. And what we were at last week was looking to see a feasibility, a plan, that plan to see if it was feasible, and brought in Jim Snyder and also Grace. So once again, I will say, we were looking at this, and it wasn't like some long, drawn-out process. And the part of it is really looking at what are those options that potentially could work. Once again, cost efficiency that has the space, that can be done fairly quickly, because this all was preceded by the Fuller Middle School vote. And making sure that when you know that in December, we're talking not a whole lot of time to try to make things work, and looking at every possible option that we have. Jim, do you want to add anything about that drawing? Yes, please. I'll let Jim add a little bit more.
So, since since I've been in this position, I've been tasked with all kinds of wonderful challenges, and one after another, they continue to evolve. So one of my concerns were in this facility is being able to have them have their own entrance and their own separation, and So, with that being said, I wanted to try to minimize the footprint. I know you might not think it, but I have a challenge ahead of me to fit the entire health department in somewhere. So when I looked at it, I understand. So when I looked at it, I looked at least disruption of space. And I know you might not think it. However, these are 4 offices.
How much space total, Jeff?
2444. So, and that includes the corridor, that includes the storage room. This is obviously the Heritage Gallery, and that's the multi-purpose room. And without having a separate entrance, that's the only place you could put with the separate entrance. I wish I had a different answer for you, but
There's no restrooms in that space?
no.
And it's not accessible.
What's not accessible now?
That end.
No, he's gonna make it accessible.
Oh, you're gonna revise it?
Yes. It will be accessible.
I want you to finish up on this so that I can afford the group more time to ask questions.
Talk about parking.
Now, we did have this discussion, and I know more than most of you in here, the challenges that Grace has with programming and parking. One of our issues of what we do, when we do things in facilities, we never make them big enough. And by the time we even finished our occupancy, even after the 3rd phase, the parking lot was already too small. So we're gonna rotate the parking of the staff of the health department, not to park here. It's gonna be off-site. They're gonna park either at the Bowditch, or there's other avenues that we normally do at the Memorial Building. We have 44 spaces at the Memorial Building. And like inspectional services and stuff, they stagger the parking. They park either at the Danforth with their personal vehicle, or they go to the Pearl Street garage. So one of the challenges that we looked at is making sure that we accommodated, and we were very sensitive to the parking situation. So moving forward, any operations that are going to use the parking lot is going to be staggered to a time where there's no high peak use in this facility, so that the parking doesn't become a challenge. It was a challenge even for us to walk here and to do this meeting.
Okay, my last question. It hasn't been an impact assessment against Callahan with Board of Health moving in. I'm not sure whether that has happened. And with that last question, I'm going to ask people, please move over to the podium if you're going to ask questions, please. Orderly. Some of the people that cannot move, no, you sit down. Okay. Okay, that's fine. For those that cannot get up and over to the podium, please just identify yourselves and I'll make sure that you get a mic. Yeah, understand. Yes. I know that he's there. He's been calling me all day. Okay. I'm going to ask that you limit the amount of time so that people can ask questions. So the first person that I'm going to choose is
my name is Ray Barnstone, and I have.
Would you please, when you get up on the mic, please identify who you are? Thank you.
I forgot my name.
Yeah.
I'm not old. My question is,
please identify yourself.
I did.
Okay. I'm getting old. My hearing's going. Go ahead.
My question is, what is so sacred about that leaving that school? Why are they leaving that school? Why can't they stay there?
Okay, let's get an answer. Who's going to answer that? All right, here's the answer to that question.
He asked why it was so sacred to leave the school. One of the challenges when I finally sat down with Matt Tordai when they laid out the plans for the, finalized the plan for the new school, the health department's in the rear of the Fuller School. The new building is literally going to be constructed 20 feet off the corner of that building. So the entire building is going to be, that whole side is going to be in a construction zone. And it's going to cut off the access to where they are now. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Not the footprint of the new existing facility of the new school. They're through the entire parking lot. They even cut off parking lot space from the college that's rented from our Farley school. It's a large construction project that's ongoing.
Please.
Rhonda Andrews.
No, I can't hear you. Make sure that's on.
It's on. Rhonda Andrews.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Jim Devitt mentioned this, and I was thinking about this.
All right, hold on a second. Brandy?
Yep.
We're
Okay,
increasing
Brian?
the volume.
Jim Diva had mentioned this, and I had thought about it before I came into this meeting. SMART has been in this city, city, for many years. They have multiple properties. They are non-tax paying. They use our services. I was wondering, and he addressed it, and no one answered him on his other suggestions. No one answered him. Why can't we talk with SMART and see if they don't have some kind of a facility, some space that we can use instead of taking our senior center?
I'll try to keep it short. Excellent question. And the answer is any property that we want to secure for these services that are not currently municipally owned, we have to go through a whole procurement process. We have to bid it out, we have to advertise, and we under law have to give every entity an equal shot at providing the opportunity to provide space for us. And it's months-long process, and we also have to secure funding in order to engage into a lease agreement. So if we were to be it SMART, be it the Marion School, be it commercial space that's in and around the community, no matter what it is, we would have to put a procurement package saying this is what we're looking for. We have to advertise it. Everyone gets an opportunity to bid on it. And we have to secure funding. And we have to secure the additional funding in order to do that. And the timeline for that process is far longer than what we have before we have to move.
Hi, folks. Oh, the microphone works now. Cheryl Tully-Soul, City Councilor at Large. What Mr. Keiser says about the process, if we were paying for space, is correct. If someone were to donate space for us, none of that comes into play. There is no RFP. If we wanted to use modular trailers like we used down at DPW, and somebody willing to have donate a parking lot, and that could be done with a donation and not have to follow the other processes. The other questions that I have are, did we reach out to the MWRTA, which is a Framingham partner of ours, who I think does have some extra space? There are a lot of people who haven't been contacted and allowed to give input into what the solutions could be here. And the thing that appeared in the press the other day said, done deal. Well, I don't think it should be a done deal without the public having a chance to weigh in. As for the wiring and infrastructure issues, Mr. Paolini is absolutely correct, and I will tell you he is also grossly overworked, he is understaffed, he is responsible for buildings that we have not been able to invest enough money into, so he's not the bad guy here. As far as the infrastructure piece is concerned, I know that the library did not put an RFP out to locate over at St. Stephen's. I don't know what they had for infrastructure over at the St. Stephen's School when they were closed during the explosion. All of this has never come forward for us to get answers on and to discuss. And to have, you know, I understand expediency and the necessity for it, but you can't get a good product without getting all the input possible. And I'm glad that everybody's here today and that the mayor's here and that they appear to, the done deal, you know, hopefully is less of a done deal than it was when it was cooked over the weekend, and that we can put our heads together and find something out of the box. We've had trailers done at DPW forever. If this is a temporary solution, that may be something, if we can get a place where they can be parked appropriately and have access to infrastructure, where we don't have to go through a bid process. But we're not going to know unless we at least look. And that's all I ask. And I'm glad that the mayor's here and that all of her staff is here. And I thank the Council on Aging and everybody here for caring about the services in our community. And I thank the gentleman behind me for letting me answer that.
Go ahead. Please identify yourself.
My name is Leslie Fleischer. I've lived in Framingham for 43 years, and that was basically my question. I just want to support and reiterate that over my time here in Framingham, whenever we needed more space, particularly for classrooms, we rented double-wide trailers that were air-conditioned, heated, whatever what was needed, and attached them to buildings to increase the spacing. If you're going to spend money on renovating buildings, spend it on renting trailers for the health department for the temporary time, and it can be done in a very short period of time, and there's your solution. And if this doesn't work out, and you take the space of the Heritage Gift Shop, are you going to reimburse the Friends of Framingham for the money they're going to lose that they raise at that gift shop that supports the Callahan Senior Center?
Go ahead, sir.
Any response?
Response? Okay.
I'm just trying to get it on.
Okay. What's happening here is that if you don't see an immediate response, more than likely somebody here from the mayor's office, if not the mayor herself, is writing this down and will respond somehow. Okay, go ahead. Next.
My name is Richard Cosma, Higgins Road, Framingham. Okay, I think the board's done a good job in terms of analyzing the situation. They went about it in a fairly professional manner. And my question is, I think they've done their due diligence, but part of the due diligence is a legal question. And the legal question here is legal access to the space given whatever the contract is between the town and this building and how it was structured, as well as the town charter vis-a-vis the health department and this relationship to the rest of the town and how it's structured. It's basically a question of contract law. It's not political. It's basically a legal decision, pretty cut and dry, I think. It's just contract law. So what do the contracts say? And as part of your due diligence, I assume you checked with the legal department and the town attorney. And I don't ask you to explain your legal strategy. I feel that would be ridiculous. But in general, to the extent you're comfortable, what do you feel your legal position is?
Okay, good enough. First of all, let me just say that the board has nothing to do with the legality aspect. Okay, on our due diligence, what we've done is what we've questioned the mayor's office on that. So the board is not that, does not have that responsibility.
No, I understand that. However, the board's options are the board's options. Everybody else in this room has other options. That's the point, legally. That's all I'll say.
And
Thank you.
that will be answered here somewhere.
Sure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Joan Rastani, and I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission. Has anyone spoken to anyone at St. Stephen's about the school that is vacant in their parking lot. It's a perfectly usable space. You can use, and it also has a parking lot. And if you want to use the trailers, that would be fine, but I'm sure that the people at the Department of Health would prefer to be in a real building. But I would be happy if you want me to schedule anything with SMOC to meet and see if there's any place they would loan us. I'm on their board of directors. I represent the town of Framingham, and I'd be happy to take on that. We don't have any parking lot.
Thank you.
Cushing Hospital?
Okay, we're going to have to move this along. We have a lot of people that are in line. Thank you very much for your comments.
Well, my name is Patrick Dunn, and I have to disclose I am a rather new member on the board of the Friends of Callahan. I've been involved in many town issues over many years, and I've been here, done that, when I was a member of the school committee. Back in the day, in the 90s, we merged a school. We merged south into north, and we had this many people in several of our meetings. We also had a lack of space for administration, and we did due diligence, and I looked at several buildings and turned some down because the promise that was forthcoming couldn't have been fulfilled. So what did we do? What people have mentioned, modular units behind the King School, and then we've had a nomadic administration for several years since. Now, one ultimate solution that had been talked about is to have a municipal building for some offices, and that would include schools and others. And, you know, we have to do the long range, but the short range, my problem I have with this whole process is it's been very tightly held, no consultation with boards of all parties involved. They've been named, but they were never consulted. And that is a criticism, and I think it's a just one. And I stopped by the office a week ago and I said, I'd like someone to talk to me until in the next meeting. So I was in there on a positive mission. Then this negative stuff came out, but I've not heard back. They were going to tell me when the next 4 meetings were going to be. Never happened. So I think the other problem I see is the idea to squeeze a 2-part operation, and I know something about the health department staff who are inspectors and the like, and a clinic. They don't necessarily, and maybe better off, could be in 2 locations. Down the road, we maybe decide we need a mobile clinic for Framingham. You know, we'll go where the action is. We have a fully staffed mobile clinic. They do exist, and we just brought our bookmobile back on stream. We've been in a garage for 25 years. So, you know, sometimes you have to look at other places for ideas, but if you're not consulting the other people, you're not going to get them. And unfortunately, this isn't a terribly positive meeting. I would like it to be, but I'm saying you're not tapping expertise. And I will say I've been there, done that on dislocation because of asbestos removal. In my job at Natick Labs, we had to move at least 2 or 3 times, and guess where they went? Modular units, which they finally took down one of them a couple of years ago, 4 years after I retired. You know, and I had a complaint because you had to walk about 100 yards to the bathroom from the modular unit. But we can solve those, but not when we have dictators who telling people not to tell their personnel that this is coming down the pipeline. So that's where I am.
Thank you very
and
much.
I do call it like it is.
Yes. I'm only going to comment from this not being a positive meeting. I will say that this meeting was convened as quick as possible to include as many seniors as possible. So anytime that the senior public or the public themselves can take part of this type of a meeting, it's a positive meeting. If you identify that you had no notice of what was happening, it was the board, Council on Aging, who identified that this had to happen, and the mayor agreed to come to this meeting. So I'm going to have to disagree to say that this is a positive meeting because you're here, and that because you're making a comment. Next, please.
My name is Nancy Donshin. I'm not quite a senior, but I'm very close. So in recent years, I've been paying close attention to the type of programming that the Senior Center offers. Some of it, I'm not sure that even when I become a senior that I will take advantage of, because I don't think it's for me. What I'm most worried about is, by taking away this space, are you impacting the Senior Center's ability to grow and change as the senior population changes, so that you are meeting the needs and wants of all seniors, not just the seniors that are already here, but those of us that are almost quite there. So that's one question. In addition, I am concerned about the fact that this process was limited to December and between December and now. That being that when the high school was enlarged, they knew that they would have to move the English department into modular trailers. I can't believe that in all the planning for Fuller, that there was never, before the vote in December, that there was never discussion that the health department would have to move out of the Fuller building or anybody else from there. Thank you. And lastly, I want to say that the biggest problem with this whole process has been lack of communication and lack of including people. I think that it was a big mistake on your part, Mayor Spicer, and for your team. And I hope and I pray that we don't have to go through this again, because it certainly is not comfortable. So thank you very much for listening to us.
Hi, my name is Brenda Walpe, and I've been a resident of Framingham for over 50 years, a taxpayer. If we have to buy a new building, we should spend the money. The seniors deserve it. You can put the health department somewhere else. I'm active in the senior center, but more than that, I also had a husband who had Alzheimer's. We have the only program, I believe, or one of the only programs in the state that has couples who one of the partners have Alzheimer's. You have no idea how important this program is to the senior center. It allows both the person with the disease and the caregiver to have support, because people don't realize it. When someone has Alzheimer's, somehow or other, and I did not have this situation, but many people do, the whole world leaves them. They're afraid either it's a catchy disease or the person is no longer the person they were before and they don't want to be in their company. So they avoid you. So it can be a very lonely existence. I fortunately did not have that situation, but by being in this group, you get to meet other people with the same disease. You are able to socialize with them. The people with Alzheimer's, even if they don't know, you don't know what they're talking about, they may talk with them and they have a fine conversation going, and it's a very positive thing. And that meets in the multi-purpose room that you are planning on taking. It also meets in the big room out there where they play volleyball. It meets several places. This is very important to the group, and you lose that multi-purpose group room. I understand that is going to have to stop that group, because there is nowhere. They meet every single Friday from 9:30 to 1:30, which is really a very big thing. And I really feel that, and I also feel that, Mayor, you didn't maybe do it totally on your own. You had your department, but from what I understand, you did not contact the city council. You did not contact Callahan about the thing until it was too late. In December, when we passed the vote, which my son happens to be a principal at a school here, and his friend was a policeman that day, and he said, it's going to be a lot of trouble. I only see seniors here. It's never going to go through. And then it went through. You should have started then, letting everybody know, and make it something that people would have.
Thank you very much.
I have two questions. Maureen Dunn, 174 Old Connecticut Path, District 4. I have two questions, but I just want to comment. I'm trying not to get emotional on the previous speaker. My father died of Alzheimer's. The Waltham Senior Center was there every minute of the way with my mother and my family. And each year, starting this year, more people will be affected by this disease. When we talk about climbing senior population, it's climbing some of the other issues that the seniors are climbing. We can't be dislodging them from this space. I do have two specific questions. One to Mayor Spicer and her team is what independent health profession assessed the infectious disease risk of mixing two populations in this building, especially given the issue of common air, and I'm not sure, possibly common bathrooms. And this is in the face of a measles public health emergency in New York City. Okay, I would like to know who conducted. And this is a follow-up to the handout that was given out. It referred to, it was just like walking in the grocery store. I have never ever, and I have a sister, a doctor, and a daughter, a microbiologist, seen a medical assessed risk is called just like walking in the grocery store. So I'd like to know the answer to that.
Sam Wong, Public Health Director. And based on my conversation with a number of physicians, including a member of my Board of Health and our public health nurse, they are medical professionals. I'm not. I'm a public health practitioner, but I'm not a medical person. They are telling me that, first of all, we are not seeing any children that are experiencing any symptoms. The clinic is for vaccination to prevent any disease. Secondly, when children come into our clinic, when we are presenting with the possible use of the Callahan Senior Center, we talked to Mr. Paolini that the only way that could make it work is to reduce the potential risk that you all might come in contact with unvaccinated children. The only way that could be even remotely possible is we have to have an isolated area and a separate entrance. So that a separate entrance, which is what Mr. Paolini presented. Yeah, that we will have to access the bathroom.
I'd just like to make a follow-up statement to that. I object to the fact that this is occurring with no independent assessment of the infection, not opinions, not conversations, a report, an independent assessment of the infectious disease risk on this population. We have a number of people who are immune system compromised. We're talking about common air, and I did not realize today we're talking about common bathrooms. And I just want to follow up one other thing. We have one of the most educated, skilled populations in the country, okay? The individuals here are more than willing to help, and on top of that, we have elected officials, we have appointed officials who could not be more skilled. We have more probably doctors per square inch. Why on day one, and I'm talking before the Fuller vote, were they not included in this conversation? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carol Castleman, prior town meeting member, and most of my thoughts have already been expressed, except I wanted to emphasize the fact that I understand the reason why the buildings are in such poor condition. I sat in that town meeting, and trying to get the town to, first of all, find the money, then allocate the money, and then do the work is very difficult. And I don't think changing the form of government has made finding money, allocating it, and doing the work any easier. The other is that we are not faced, I'm glad they changed it from temporary to interim, because I think you realistically are looking at years, which is going to take us through growth patterns of our senior citizens and our need for space for them. In reference to the public health issue, I read in the newspaper the responsibilities, I guess is the best way to say it, of the public health department was listed as two things: the clinic and municipal offices. And if it means that we can separate the clinic space from the municipal offices, it might be easier to find spacing. My idea also was modules, which could separate even the clinic from the offices and give us the separate entrances, perhaps separate bathrooms, and I'm sure you can figure out the generator. It's not rocket science. The other thing is that this meeting has demonstrated that we really need to be more forward-thinking. I've always said, you know, when we built or bought a new building, we should incorporate in that building's history when we're going to put the new roof on, when it's going to have this done, when does the floor have to be fixed. Nobody wants to hear that when they've got a brand new building, but those are all things that we know from the day we open that building as we use it. And there's no that's why we're in the situation that we're in. So we really do need to look forward. And I think what we also have seen here today is that when you get as many people involved as possible, and you just started asking questions, even to people whom you don't think they know an answer, people begin to think and ideas begin to percolate and come to the forefront. And we've had them here today. Other places, other buildings, module units. We have to keep in mind that we need to have compromise, conversations, all lead to better solutions.
It's getting warm in here. Can I open up this door? Or is the alarm going to go off?
No, you can open it up. You can open it.
All right, I think we're going to leave it closed for now.
Okay, sounds good. We'll bring a fan over.
My name is Michael Hugo. I spent 15 years as a member of the Board of Health, 8 of those as the chair. I'm currently not on the Board of Health. However, I am a lecturer for the Harvard School of Public Health and the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, which I am the vice president of. I've got a couple of suggestions, but before I do the suggestions, I want to give a little bit of background and information that people might find interesting, if not helpful. Currently, the health department is occupying 5,000 square feet at the school. In order to accommodate the health department, we would need, or I say we, and I'm sorry, I apologize in advance, I keep doing that, 15-year bad habit, I guess. The health department and the board would have to have about 3,000 usable square feet. So it would be a squeeze to fit that facility into this building. The space requirements would need to accommodate 16 full-time workers. There's a director, an assistant director, 2 admins, an environmental health manager who oversees all the inspectors, 5 inspectors, 2 community health coordinators, environmental toxic engineer, a licensed site practitioner who looks at all of the sightings of all of the environmental issues that we have, which we have too many of, 2 nurses, and 3 independent contractors. That's what we're talking about for people. In addition to that, we have they have clinic supplies, including vaccines and other medical durable goods. They have the Medical Reserve Corps, who you, I think, as senior citizens, and I think we're all familiar with them. We go to the clinics. Kathy McCarthy is one of the members. And all of their supplies have to be housed at the Board of Health or the Health Department, which include emergency prep, emergency response, hazmat, various large things that have to be stored. In addition to that, file room. There has to be room to file for all the files of the Board of Health over the years. So we have actually, what you should know is that when the office was in City Hall or in Town Hall, the public health nurse would take children out of the health office, walk across the hall, and stand in the balcony of Nevins Hall. You all know the balcony there. That's where she would give immunizations because there was nowhere physically else to do it and maintain privacy. So that was what we had at that time. I'm not going to go into the reasons that the health department was kicked out of City Hall or Town Hall at the time. I don't think it's necessary to go there. But many people that use the services of the department are not there for clinical reasons. This is another issue. They're there for reasons related to real estate transactions, such as developers who need to find out what's going on under that land, Title V septic and well placement. So if somebody needs a septic system or they have to dig a well, they have to go there. Pre-occupancy permits. Every time an apartment turns over in Framingham, the Board of Health sends an inspector in to make sure that the next people are at least getting someplace that meets the sanitary code. In addition to that, 400 and something food permits. Each one of those needs 2 inspections a year in Framingham. Tobacco permits. We currently have 72 licenses out there. We've cut it back to 60, and now the board has cut that back to 30, but it's going to take years before that happens. One of the visions of the old town manager was one-stop shopping, that somebody could come to town hall and they could go to department and do everything that they needed to do. That would include the office of the mayor, the council, the assessors, licensing, DPW payments, building department, city clerk, conservation commission, I only need 2 or 3 more minutes, planning board, zoning, and the Board of Health. There are departments in City Hall that are not public-facing departments. By that I mean that you would never walk into that department for any reason, such as you would never.
I'm going to have to cut you down here because
2 minutes.
The purpose of this meeting and the comment
is to inform the public. Thank you, sir.
No, it's not to inform the public. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss Board of Health moving in, okay?
And I have some. You've now taken more time than I would have taken, so let me finish.
It's taken a lot of time, and I've got a lot of people behind.
So purchasing, in IT, finance, facilities, these are departments that you don't have to deal with. So let me jump right to my suggestions. First of all, the can has been kicked from the time that we gave up the Maynard building, from the time that we didn't purchase that little building right next door to City Hall because the members of town meeting thought it was unnecessary to purchase it at that time, to the time that we gave up the purchase of the Perini building, all of which would have taken care of all of our problems today. So my suggestions are that we look at the police substation at Shoppers World, that we look at the pumping station at Saxonville, and I'm not saying for the health department, I'm saying that we could put the facilities, the places where they make the signs for the buildings and all of that in those facilities, the chapel at Knobscott, renting space at St. Stephen's or at the building next door to City Hall, or we could just take the facilities department, move that into the state lumber building and give them a tax abatement, work out a deal with Stop and Shop, and move the Board of Health into the library. And with that, I say thank you, and I'm sorry for running so long.
Hi, my name's Carla Schwartz. I lived in Framingham for 21 years, plus almost 22. And I've heard other people saying that it sounds like the movement of the Board of Health was not really included in the Fuller plan. And so what was voted for right away is really not what's happening, because the first thing that I'm hearing is that, well, this has to be the first thing that has to be done before we can do anything on the Fuller thing. So essentially if we're doing it right and we actually work on, finding a space that's amenable and convenient and works for the entire community, there will be money involved that hasn't been voted on. And so we're starting with a cost overrun right away on the project. And why can't we just delay the Fuller School until we get a solution to this, which is obviously the preliminary step to making the Fuller School changes happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mel Washaw, former town meeting member. One of the problems of being near the end of the line is people in front of you have already stated what you came up to talk about. So I'll skip that and do something that I wasn't quite ready to speak about, but it's relevant. We all know, or we should know, that no one wants to hurt seniors. And that includes you, Mayor. We know that. But the intentions of those who pick Callahan is not good enough. You've got to understand how seniors feel about this. The very fact that we're here today in such great numbers is one indication. The other is seniors don't live. Most seniors don't live the way they used to. A lot of them have not saved money for retirement. They live day to day on Social Security. They're not living at home the way they were. They're perhaps living with family, or family is living with them. And you know what? They found a home. Another home. It's called the Callahan Senior Center. And Mayor, taking away, whether it's 11% or a third of their home, regardless of the merits of having it at the Callahan Center, is wrong.
Thank you very much.
Kathy Vassar, District 1. I knew what I was going to say and it just flew away. I'm one of the co-founders of a group called Knobscott Neighbors. And one of our earlier meetings, we had the director of Callahan, who was looking for suggestions and ideas and wanted to discuss Callahan and what they offer. And the participants in a well-attended meeting mentioned a number of programs that they would like to see Callahan initiate. And the answer to almost every one of them was, we do not have the space. We do not have the employees. So seniors have been waiting to see the monies for the employees, not realizing they also need to be concerned about their space and what is already perceived as being inadequate to run those new programs that they would like to see. And this is happening just as the number of seniors is rising exponentially. And when I heard about the impact on the Alzheimer's program, I really was concerned, because I have a number of friends who have participated in that program, having family members with Alzheimer's. I know how devastating it is, and that population is rising even faster. So I would ask if you have looked at maybe some non-traditional, you've heard some other ideas that had occurred to me, but also I can remember years ago when the Memorial Building was short on meeting space or office space. The lower level of Nevins was broken up with temporary partitions. Did you look at Nevins Hall and using that space and breaking it up with temporary partitions as part of a program of maybe separating the two different functions, thank you, functions of the Board of Health? I still think this is the saddest of options. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Cannon. I'm one of the city councilors here in Framingham, in your city council. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to the Council on Aging and the work that you do, and especially to the professional staff, to Grace and to Randy and to Cheryl and to Lisa and Jamie and Ralph and so many, and Brendan, the travel office, so many of the people that make this place the special community that it is. I feel we needn't have gotten to this point. All of this was preventable. You're looking in this small room with a small percentage of our population in this room, the solutions to so many of the questions that were never asked of the public. And I understand that the procurement process requires a certain investment of time, but instead of waiting until the last minute, if perhaps you began acting when you were informed of this back in, I think it was, certainly January of last year, well into the school building process, you could have started realizing, we got to start thinking about that. And I like Dr. Dunn's idea. Some of those programs, some of the health department functions are public facing and some aren't. Maybe you don't need X number of space that's contiguous. A whole series of meaningful discussions were just never happened. And I saw on your document some good reasons why certain locations were crossed off the list. But you neglected to cross this location off the list for its own set of very good reasons. Framingham has long been a community that supports its own. Framingham has long been a community that supports its schools, and Framingham has long been a community that supports its active older adults. We had an incredibly generous gift, a 7-figure gift to fund the room that we're in now, the facility that we're in now, and to lay the foundation of what I thought, Mayor, you would build upon instead of taking away from. I was saddened to read that the reason we don't need to honor the wishes of the Blaze family is because, and we have great lawyers, because it wasn't attached to the deed or it wasn't executed, what have we become if that's the reason that we're finding a way out of the mutual understanding this community has always had? We knew what we were taking the money for. We were proud of it. And what does that say to the next generation of local, successful philanthropists that want to continue to support their community? I can't give my money to Framingham because they're simply not going to do what they say they're going to do. Madam Mayor, you're the boss. You're the CEO. You're the mayor. This is your call. This is your decision. And I appreciate you being here. I don't want to solve this legislatively. I don't want it to become one of those things. I want you to be part of the solution, righting the wrong and correcting the course that we're on now. And thank you, all of you, for being here.
Hi, my name is George Kay. I'm also a member of the City Council. So I remember I had the pleasure of being town manager in the early 2000s, and I clearly remember one day when Mary Potcher, who was the director here, came to me and said, we have someone who's willing to give $1 million to, start or build a senior center, let us purchase a senior center. And I thought Mary had lost her mind. I couldn't imagine someone was really going to give us $1 million. I truly did not believe it, okay? But it was true. And it was a very, very, very generous gift. And I don't recall whether legally what was in the letter and what was put in the deed. But I think what Mike Cannon just said is kind of the same thing. It's a matter of doing what's legal or what's right. And I think at the time, and I can remember that warm summer day when we dedicated this place, there was a lot of optimism and there was a lot of positiveness about the fact that Senior Center finally had a real viable location. And there was no question, the belief in the community at that time was that this was to be exclusively and always a senior center. That's the reason for the gift, and that's what happened. So I think this is kind of an unfortunate move, and I hope we're able to find something different, because really, this is something I appreciate more and more over the years, maybe as I get older, that dollar for dollar, this is really the best buy in the entire city government. For what we give, for the budget that we give this place and the services we've got from this place over the years for people, which my mother was ill a few years ago, and I didn't really realize until then the level and the quality of service that was available and coordinated out here. It was really unspeakably important to our family when that happened. And these are the types of services that are so inexpensive but so important that I think we just can't afford to infringe upon them, and we need to find another solution. And the last thing I'll say is I appreciate you saying that we need to put our heads together and find another solution, and we do. But it's not these people's problem to find the solution. It's our problem as a government to find the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tara Alves, and I'm a resident here in Framingham. I'd like to say that I agree with everybody. This is a new season, and hopefully we can work it out.
Hold the mic.
Okay, so my name is Tara Alves, and I happen to be a resident here for over 30 years. And I happen to think this is a new season and that we could work this out. And I wanted to just put out an option. One of the options is that at 135 Newbury Street, where the charter school is of McAuliffe, there's a building attached next to it, and it has 8,000 to 20,000 foot, space. So anyways, Ovar Oswald is the agent, and it's ovar.oswald@colliers.com. So anyways, I've been talking to the McAuliffe administrator, and she says it's available right now. So maybe that might be a possibility. And I was also in Boston today, and oddly enough, a bus went by, and it was a medical bus for the community. I am a strong supporter of that. Maybe someday we can have something like that, and people can, that are in the medical field, go someplace and just, work out what the plan is, and then get on the bus and then go to different sections of Framingham, since we're such a diverse community. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Doak, and during the day, I am a companion to a woman who lives in a nursing home. She suffers from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. From May well until October, I wore the same outfit. My hair was the same. And we finally got to a point where she recognizes me. If there's any disruption to her day, it's very unsettling for her. Continuity has been key to her health. And that's what I worry about from people who do suffer from Alzheimer's. Any disruption to what is their new norm will be detrimental to their health. Someone I think Mel previously stated that no one wants to hurt seniors. But inadvertently, any disruption to people who do suffer from Alzheimer's will lead to some health impacts. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Hi,
I'm sorry, I couldn't stand in line because I'm babysitting the live video. I'm Norma Schulman. I've lived here for 40-some years and was a town meeting member, I learned, on the last day of town meeting for 27 years. And one of the proudest moments I had at town meeting was the day I got asked to make a resolution that came as a surprise to the moderator. And the resolution was to set up a senior center study committee because we were at risk of losing the time frame for the $1 million grant. And the moderator thought it was out of line, it was not appropriate, and I whined and begged at the microphone, and we got a senior center study committee. So I feel very connected to this center, and that's the reason I'm willing to stand over there with a camera. And if you want to see this video after this, it'll be recorded. I think it's showing sideways, but I think you can still listen. You have to go to my Facebook page, Norma Schulman, spelled S-H, no C, on Facebook. And I will also share it with a lot of the other Facebook pages and other resources around town so that your friends who aren't here can see it. There are a lot of people watching it online.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Kathy McCarthy, and hello to all of you. Many of you know me from town meeting, from volunteering, as you do, and through Medical Reserve Corps, which is under the auspices of the Health Department. We have a very active group of all ages involved in that. I think as far as, and by the way, I am a senior. Even though we don't have to be 65, 62, you can be in the transitional ARP way to get in here. So we are multi-dimensional in this facility. And it was mentioned about it being a home. Not just for some people that are maybe having problems with memory, but those who maybe are transitioning from a job, who maybe have become disabled, and finding their way. It was a new program that is in the process of starting about transitional, finding your way, new retirees and whatever, and being a mentor. And that's another wonderful program. But let's face it, we are getting a bigger population of us old folks with young hearts. And I remember the vote for this, as many of us do, and seeing the evolution of this. I also remember many of it through Ways and Means and various other expenses paid to improve the building for the purpose of our seniors. And let's face it, we hear a lot about, and we love our kids in the community, but we hear about, oh, it has to be better, this, that, and the other thing, better programs and whatever. But the reality is, we have a whole building population of us that is also expanding and needs to be remembered. Now, I also want everybody to keep in mind that the Board of Health has a vital purpose in our community, inclusive of not just with kids, but with adults of all ages. We can't forget and make them seem like the enemy, because they're not. It's a service that is provided to all of us, and very necessary and vibrant service. So let's not put one department against the other. In my opinion, the Health Department should have never been put into Fuller, dumped, as I usually say. I think the problem is during all the discussions, public information discussions of the Fuller, and that it was never mentioned about the Health Department. It was forgotten, as usual, because we were kind of behind the scenes. Let's come together. And the fact is, we do try to cut costs
And let's face it, all of us don't want our taxes to go up. But this is an important part of what we need to do as a community. And we need to, if we need to rent, I would prefer a brick and mortar because I'm handicapped, and even though they have a ramp, those trailers are not very good for bathroom facilities and everything else. I don't think it's conducive or welcoming in that respect. But it was mentioned about St. Stephen's, which is right central to our community. I don't agree that McAuliffe down in Saxonville is a good location for that, and it would start out as, I understand, it's a shell of whatever. Didn't we move out of McAuliffe at the time because it wasn't fit? In any case, let's get together and find a solution, and I hope. Now, I don't have any control because we don't have town meeting, we don't have the ability to vote on these things, but I implore the city council to stand behind the expenditures that need to be done to rent a place such as the St. Stephen's or whatever. I don't know how much it's going to be, but instead of pulling back on things that are necessary to our community, necessary to our seniors, to realize in cutting costs in some ways, we ruin the whole passion of what we built. So let's find a way that's reasonable within a reasonable time frame, and let's support all of our departments, all ages. And I think although this option was noted and trying to make it work, I think we can, I believe we can find a way, even if it has to cost a little money, because, you know, others, the school has a higher budget, maybe not cut so much on the city side, because we need this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to have taken so much time. See you.
My name is Charles Fontaine. I'm a volunteer here at the Senior Center, and I'd like to really speak in defense of the Senior Center. First off, I'm involved with the travel department, and I recently just transferred 1,200 clients from one data system to another. That means there are 1,200 senior citizens that take advantage of our travel department. Because I have been involved with the software there, I know for a fact that the weekly trips that Brenda puts up are the cheapest you will ever find anywhere. I defy you to go and look for a cheaper trip on her weekly day trips. Secondly, I have been involved with the boutique, the Artist Center. I've actually sold about a dozen of my paintings to the population here in the center. I'm sorry, not paintings, photographs. And occasionally I will be greeted by somebody who says, well, you know that rose? I have it on my wall. I couldn't have sold those because I do this as an amateur photographer here in the building. Lastly, I volunteer in the computer center. I'm one of the, quote, experts that you can ask for help. We provide a service, clean your computer. You can't match that service on the outside market for less than $80. And typically, that service will cost you $150, and they will, quote, nuke and pave your computer, which means they'll make it look like you bought it out of the factory. Well, if you've got 2 years of updates, you're looking at 4 or 5 hours of updates. And lastly, I cannot understand how taking out that 11%, which includes the travel department offices and the boutique and the hallway, is not going to impact on our services. That I find very difficult to understand.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Dan Libertari, former town meeting member and lifetime member of Framingham.
that $1.5 million that was given to Framingham was for the senior center, not the senior center / health department. If we let the health department in, it's the camel's nose in the tent. If you think that's the last department that'll be coming in here, I've got news for you. And notice, it's interim. Yeah, temporary, about as temporary as the pyramids. This is wrong. This is the senior center. That is what it was for. And the mayor knew it. When they started talking about that school, they knew right then and there the health department had to move. Why wasn't something done then? Why wait till now when it's almost too late to do anything? And I'm sorry, not a mayor. If this is how you're doing things, you're working really close at being a one-term mayor.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jim Friedman. I'm relatively new to Framingham, very new to the Callahan Center, and relatively new to being a senior. The comment I have is here, as we heard from the people in the audience today, there's a social justice issue I think which is not being addressed. We are the privileged white class who are telling you about what we need as seniors, but I don't see our Brazilian colleagues, I don't see our Chinese neighbors, I don't see our Koreans, I don't see the diverse community that's part of us that I have met here. And I enjoy being with every day. So this has become part of my new community as being a senior. I'm a semi-retired professor of communication at UMass Lowell. And so speaking for them as well, I hope you understand that it's not just us in this room who are being served, it's the entire senior community which is growing. And in terms of your list of benefits to the Board of Health or the expediency of shifting, the location of the Board of Health, there are a lot of benefits I see to you as leaders of the organization, but there is no well-articulated series of benefits to us as seniors. You have non-specific, well, we could do this, or we might do that, or down the road something else could happen, or there might be nested benefits, but there's no clear articulation, as yet in any dialogue that I've heard or anything any of you have said as to the benefits of us, while the benefits to you are quite clear. So I would like to see some kind of balance in your representation of good for you, good for the town, but what about the people who use this facility every day, whose lives are affected every day, as my life will be affected every day. And as one of my friends says, becoming a senior never gets old. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you, everyone. My name is Karen Dempsey, and I want to thank Madam Mayor for having this. This is wonderful. I think this is great. I wish that we had done this a few times and sooner, because as you see, we're learning a lot of valuable information. I'm not a senior yet. I'll be there in a few years, and I'm really looking forward to it. I can hardly wait to try out the programs and come here and look into everything. So I've learned a lot just being here now. But also I am the chair of the Disability Commission, and we have worked very closely with the Callahan Senior Center on different accessibility projects. So I have one concern and then a question I have about a place to possibly locate for accessibility. I'll get into that, but a concern I have as far as having the health clinic with young children or all children that are going to be getting vaccinated or coming in for whatever reason, being mixed in, even though I'm not sure how it would be separated, or I haven't spoken to Jim yet about this specifically, but when you have children, and I have twin boys who are 12, and when you're in elementary and young, and I don't know if you guys have heard the saying, they're human petri dishes. The children are. They come home with, could be a minor cold to the flu, to whatever. And also having a compromised immune system because of my disability, but also living with my mother, who has had pneumonia 4 times and COPD, we are very careful to make sure if and when the kids get sick or a cold or their friends come in. So that, for me, right off the bat, when I heard that, I'm like, I don't think that's the best place to be mixing the younger children with the senior population that are typically might have some type of immune suppressant system or something going on. So that was one concern. And then another question I have is about the accessibility, and I've heard lots of places things brought up, and I've heard about the trailers, and trailers would be okay as far as accessibility as long as they were big enough, wide enough to meet the AAB code for bathrooms, for getting in. So there would be a lot of work. Obviously, the commission could help with that if that's a route we might choose to go. But I wanted to get back to one of the places, well, one place that was suggested, Marion High School, though I would love to say that's a great idea. It's as inaccessible as you can get. And I know that because I went to high school there, and I was carried up with my wheelchair every day for 4 years by my mother. So anyway, she's wonderful. But so you know, we obviously can't do that. You know, unless there was going to be money put into making, which I would love Marion High School to be made accessible. But that's another whole story. So my question though is about Petrini, and as far as the accessibility there. Because I know accessibility means more than just flat and being able to get into, but Petrini you can. I've been there on many different different times, and it's a beautiful building. I don't know if you guys have ever been in there, but from the outside doesn't do it justice. But, you know, I believe there's handicap parking. That's an easy fix if not. You can get in. I don't know if there might be a little left. Easy fix. There's an elevator. Once inside, I'm not sure about the bathrooms. So I don't know, but that's obviously something that could be looked into. So I don't know where our relationship is as far as with that building and being able to use that, but I don't see why that, if there is space available, that couldn't be re-looked at. And of course, the Disability Commission would be more than willing to help look at that and see what there might be for issues. And again, I'm thinking that it would be a relatively cheap cost. So I have maybe a question for Jim, or we can ask it later. I'm wondering about the accessibility and the possibility of using Petrini for that, as far as being explored more in depth. And I know Jim's probably gonna let me have it after, but I'm just curious.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Mary Ellen Kelly, Chief Financial Officer. We actually looked at moving some of the non-public facing offices, primarily the accounting department, to the Perini building. And there is 3,000 available square feet, but it's in the back corner and it is not accessible. The back entrance is not accessible, and there's not a way to get to it from the front. So that was the dilemma that we had with going to the Perini building. That back entrance is not accessible. It also needs to be, what most people don't understand is the Perini business that's there is a secure business. They have Department of Defense contracts, therefore the building entrances have to be secured. So in order to get to that space, we would have to put up a secure door in the back part of those 3,000 square feet in order to segregate ourselves from the Perini offices. So that's also something that would be an excessive cost. In addition to that, we got a quote of $19 a square foot to be able to actually rent the space. And then on top of that, we would have to be running fiber to the building to be able to do the computers, all of the other regular things that we would have to do to the facility to be able to make it usable for people. So when it came time to take a look at putting the Board of Health there, we were thinking we could go there because the accounting department isn't really that public facing. And so if with the secure door to be able to buzz everybody individually and not even to be able to see the door wouldn't be that much of a hardship. But if we were doing that with the health department and having the actual access to the door inaccessible, that would not be feasible when it came to the health department. So that's why we ruled out that particular space.
Okay, we have just one more person. Okay, now we have a few more, okay. The person that I'm going to is, she hadn't identified herself when she came here, so I'll let her do that now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Pacha, the former director of the Callahan Center. Thank you very much. I just want to say I've been in touch with the Blazers, and they're very disappointed about giving up any space in this building to another department. They wanted it for the seniors of Framingham. This was their initial gift. They went down to Pearl Street, and at the time, the Friends of Callahan were raising money, and we had raised $50,000 through auctions, yard sales, cake sales, and Jack came to see me, and he asked, how are you going to raise more money for the center? And he went from $40,000 to $500,000, and he said, so what's your plan? And I went back to my selling baseball tickets, baseball bats, and he said, oh, hell, I'll give you $1 million. So I have to tell you that that was the biggest donation by a private person to any town agency. And it was, I've never heard of that happening anywhere across the state of Massachusetts. So he came down and he saw our roof was leaking on Pearl Street. We had pails. Some of the older people will remember that. And it was disgraceful. It was disgraceful for a town this large to treat their seniors in that manner. Now, we raised the money and town meeting members went and they voted in. So we were very delighted with it. But it's about time that the seniors and the town and the city recognizes that seniors are here, they're a growing population, and they demand services. That's all I have to say.
Hold on, one last, she wanted, I'm sorry?
I want to say Grace and the staff here have been doing a wonderful job, but they are employed by the city, so they have to respond to the city request. But it's up to the Friends and all of you to get together to demand that this doesn't change. In fact, it should be growing. We should be looking for more property on the north side of town to have a satellite center. It's about time.
Well, I am Jim DeSimone, and I am active at Callahan and also on the board of directors of the Friends. And I'm sorry I haven't been to this meeting the whole time because I had to have my taxes done. 9:30 appointment made long ago. How did I ever know this was going to happen? But my main thing is anxiety. I'm anxious. A lot of people are anxious. This whole thing, technical as it gets, I'm sorry to call it a lot of gobbledygook, but what's not, now maybe it's what I'm about to say has been expressed, and if not, I don't know why. But is anybody here anxious? Has this affected anybody? I've seen it take a toll on some of us. It's taken a toll on me. When I made a fool of myself up there a little while ago, I had to sit down again and take deep breaths because I have a pacer and it affected me too much, but things affect me a little too much. And other people can be affected a little too much. In this whole process, I don't see that things are going to get any better. They're going to get worse. This is a senior center. We're supposed to improve the senior center. We're not supposed to cause an atmosphere where it goes the other way. People are not going to feel any better about if this comes to pass, people are not going to feel any better at all. They're going to feel worse. There's no chance we can feel better about it. There's only a chance that we can feel worse, and some of us can feel very badly about it. It's just, and that's an atmosphere. That's an atmosphere that pervades year after year after year, and who knows how long this will take. I hear someone saying this is temporary. Right. And someone made a great remark. In any event, my thoughts are not all that clear, but I just wanted to say that this can only go negatively, and for the sake of us all, it should not go negatively. It should go positively. I don't see how it can ever go positively. Do something to increase the value of what is good for seniors and not decrease it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. 3:39. I appreciate everybody attending today's meeting. I think it's been informative, and I think the mayor's been notified that there's a concern. I'm going to expect you people in my next Council on Aging meeting in another month. And I'm going to let the last comment, next to the last comment, because I have to officially adjourn this meeting, but I'm going to make the next to the last comment the mayor's.
Thank you, Clyde. And thank you, everyone. I heard you. I've listened to some of your concerns, and many of them, some of the options that you put forth. We've explored them, and we will continue to explore them. If there's anything else that we can acquire, but some of them we have already, and particularly looking at some of the factors, as I said, trying to look at our property that we have access and own, and that we can move through fairly quickly as best we could. The other issues that stand before us is an ongoing one that I heard several times, because as our senior population is growing in our community, to be thinking about ahead of the curve of how do we maybe create a Callahan 2. And I hear that and I believe that. And the reason I believe that is because as I looked at northern Framingham and looked at ways in which we could potentially grow there, that is definitely in the cards, but it has never been studied. No one has actually said, we haven't studied that, and we need to do that. We need to also look at what we're going to do with our other buildings and how we're going to think about, as we grow as a city, what are those things that we have not paid attention to? And I can honestly say the condition of some of our buildings. This team of professionals that have worked in the city government, Jim Snyder, Jim Paolini, they have done such due diligence, and their expertise as municipal employees, their expertise is valued. Talking to Jim, talking to Grace, we have sat and looked at times of when the center is used, and this is in consultation with the senior leadership team. This is not separate from them. In preparation for this meeting, it is to get as many facts as we can. And that's what it is. It was a fact-finding mission over the last several months, and looking at other facilities, looking at other possible facilities as well. So I want you to know, I'm not stopping this dialogue. I hold community office hours on a regular basis. I'm getting ready, 5 o'clock. I'm back in City Hall in the Oblonde room. And if you'd like to come and continue the dialogue, I'm there. I'm there to listen. I'm there to be responsive. And I have always been responsive. And I do pay attention carefully. So, and that's the other part of this conversation. There's a lot of moving parts, and they're moving rapidly, and they're also, the reality is that we have not necessarily taken good care of all of our facilities. So, and trying to think about how do we move forward as a city, it is a bigger conversation. That is why we have a strategic initiative oversight committee that has formed, to look at those bigger perspective pictures, to also look at ways in which we can build revenue in order to afford it, because that's the other issue, is thinking about revenue. How do we afford the growth that we need to have in this community? So these are all of the topics that we need to continue to have the conversation. And it is, and one other thing that you said, this is a partnership, and I think Councilor King said it best. He was the town manager, and he talked about ways in which it is our legislative problem to solve, to work with the city council, to think about ways in which we can move the needle. So I am in all favor of that. I have been since I've been in office, to work together. But there are the components of being able to think about a situation, gather as much facts as we possibly can, and make sure we have the correct facts. And then being able to move forward from there. So I thank you for, this is the Council on Aging's meeting. I thank you for your comments. As I said, I will be at City Hall from 5 to 6 o'clock in the Avlonde room. I welcome you to join me there. And if you have more questions.
Can I ask, who has a clipboard? Is there a clipboard? Way back there. Would you please bring it up? It never came over here? The clipboard never came over, please. And if you could sign it, I'd appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for showing up. I think this is an important time. And with that being said, may I have a motion? Seconded? All in favor? Any opposition? Let it be written that we have completed the meeting. Thank you very much, folks.